Hey guys, I want to go ahead and do another video on these coterminal angles and trig ratios, okay? Some people had questions on these, they're having trouble with it. So let me go ahead and show you this. Now, coterminal angles, okay? Remember, a coterminal angle is an angle that's on the same place. So let me go ahead and give you just a quick example here. Okay, so if we have an angle here, okay, let's say it's this angle right there. All right. If I go all the way around and I end up at the same spot, well, essentially it's the same angle. What have I done? All I've done is just go around 360 degrees. That's all I've done. So if I have an angle like 45 degrees and then I add 360, well, that's essentially the same location. Okay, and that's going to be 415 degrees. Or I can also go backwards. Okay, so if I go backwards, if I go clockwise, then I would do that. Then I would go minus 360 degrees. Okay, and then there would be whatever that is, negative 3. What is that? 315. Okay, same thing. But if we're not talking about degrees, we're talking about radians. Okay, so how would we do that? Well, pi over 4 is 45 degrees. We're going to add 2 pi. How do we do that? Well, we need the same denominator, so 2 times 4 is 8. So we're going to do 8 pi over 4 plus 8 pi over 4. And that's going to give us 9 pi over 4. So this guy is a coterminal of pi over 4. And then we would do the same thing. So we would do pi over 4 minus 2 pi, which is the same thing as pi over 4 minus 8 pi over 4. And then 1 minus 8, well, that's negative 7 pi over 4. So these are coterminal angles. They're on the same position on the unit circle. Because remember, a circle can go around many, many times. So let's go ahead and do some of these problems and see if we can figure them out, okay? So for 185 degrees, we want to find the coterminal angle. So we're going to stay with degrees. So we're going to do 185 degrees plus 360 degrees. Okay. And what's that going to give us? 5 plus 0, that's 5. 8 plus 6 is 14. 1, 3, 4, 545 degrees. So this is the coterminal angle of 185. That's the positive one, okay? So now if we want to do a negative, we're going to do minus 360, okay? And do the same thing. And what would that be? That would be a negative 180, 175, I believe it is. 175 degrees, okay? So this guy would be a coterminal angle of also 185 degrees, except one is negative, one is positive, and that's all you do. But when we get to radians, we're doing much the same thing, except now we're talking about radians. Well, you have to remember that going around the unit circle one time is 2 pi radians because you're going around once, okay? Just like remember the circumference of a circle is 2 pi times the radius, right? Well, 2 pi, they get it because that's going around the circle. Well, then how do we add this together? Remember, you need the same denominator. So you're going to multiply 2 times 3. That's going to give me 6. So 7 pi over 3 plus 6 pi over 3. Okay, right? 6 divided by 3 is 2, right? So we just add them now. So we get 13 pi over 3. And then this guy is a coterminal of 7 pi over 3. Same thing we're doing going backwards, subtracting minus 6 pi over 3. Okay, 7 minus 6. And that would be, what is that, 1? 1 pi over 3. Okay. And so this guy's another coterminal angle of 7 pi over 3. And that's important because now when you get to these guys over here, we're going to have to use them because I don't want to be dealing with negative angles, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to change him into a positive coterminal angle. And the way you do it is you think, okay, well, how many times does 2 go into 5? Well, let's say 2 times, right? Okay, so let's do 2, all right? 2 pi. But 2 times 2, that's going to give me 4, so that's negative 5 pi over 2 plus 4 pi over 2. When I do the math, I'm going to get negative pi over 2. But wait a minute, I don't like dealing with negatives, so I'm going to do it again. Okay? So now we have sine of negative pi over 2. Okay? So I'm going to add pi over 2 again. I'm going to go around the circle one more time. Okay? So 2 times 2 is 4. So negative pi over 2 plus 4 pi over 2. That's going to give me 3 pi over 2. Okay, so now this guy here is the same as if I would solve sine of 3 pi over 2. They're in the exact same position. So where is 3 pi over 2? You have to know your unit circle. So 3 pi over 2 on the unit circle is right over here. Okay, if you don't know, you can just look at a unit circle and just kind of use it until you learn it. But what's the point here? That is 0, comma, negative 1. So you don't go left or right, but you go straight down. So that's 0, negative 1. And remember, cosine is the first coordinate and sine is the second one, because we're talking about trigonometry. So sine of 3 pi over 2 is negative 1. So the answer is negative 1. There it is. Okay, so let's see if we can fine tune this. What about 7 pi over 2? Where is that located? Well, how many times does 2 go into 7? Well, that goes, was that 2, 3 times? So we're going to do 3. But you see how it's positive? I'm going to go ahead and subtract it, okay, because it seems like it's gone around the circle 1 too many times. So I'm going to bring it back so that it's so that it's within one unit circle or one turn around the circle. So this is 6 pi over 2. Okay. And then 7 pi minus 6 pi, that's 1 pi over 2. Cool. So then this guy is the same thing as sine of pi over 2. Well, where is pi over 2? Same thing, unit circle. Where's pi over 2? It's right up here. There's pi over 2. Well, what are the points? What's the coordinate of that point? That point is 0, comma, positive 1. So remember, sine is the one on the right, the y coordinate. The answer is 1. So sine of pi over 2 is 1. So remember, what you want to do is you want to take these and either add them or subtract them. Notice that when it's negative, I'm adding because I want to make it into a positive. And when it's positive, I'm actually subtracting to actually make it smaller so I can be able to use it better. Okay, let's go ahead and do a few more of these. What about tangent? Okay, tangent of negative pi, it's a negative angle. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it positive. Okay, what am I going to add? I'm going to add 2 pi because I want to make it positive. So this ends up being 1 pi. So tangent of negative pi is in the same position as tangent of positive pi. All right, cool. So now go back to my unit circle. Where's pi? Okay, pi is over here. What is the coordinate of that point? Well, it's negative 1, comma 0. Well, what's the definition of tangent? It's sine divided by cosine, okay? So tangent, okay, is sine over cosine. Sine divided by the cosine. Well, what does that mean? That means it's the y divided by the x. So it's 0 divided by negative 1. Well, 0 divided by anything is 0. So the answer to this guy is 0. Okay? So these first three, you had to use the unit circle, the corner points, what I call them. For the next ones, you're going to have to use your mnemonic with your hand, okay? So let's look at this one, cosine. So how many times does 3 go into 7? Okay, that goes into it, what, 2 times, right? But if I only use 2, it's still going to be negative. So I'm going to use 3. So I'm going to make it 3 so I can make it positive. 3 times 3 is 9. So now you have negative 7 pi over 3 plus 9 pi over 3. So you see how this is going to end up being positive? If I only use 2, it's going to still be negative, and I don't want that. Negative 7 plus 9 is 2 pi over 3. Okay? So now this is the same thing as cosine of 2 pi over 3. Excellent. So now I got to figure this guy out. All right, so here's what you got to do. Now 2 pi over 3, you're going to have to use your hand, or you can use a unit circle if you don't know. All right, 2 pi over 3, remember, this is your x-axis. This is your y-axis. This is 30 degrees, 45 degrees, and 60 degrees. This is pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3. So this is my reference angle, okay? This is the one I'm looking at, 2 pi over 3. So pi over 3, that's what I'm looking at, pi over 3. Where's pi over 3 at? Right over here. Boom, I fold it. Cosine. Cosine represents the bottom fingers, okay? The bottom. So the answer is square root of 3. It always has a square root. Always, always, always. Divided by 2. It always has a 2 on the bottom as well, okay? The only thing now is I got to figure out, is it positive or is it negative? So we got to go back to our unit circle. Where is 2 pi over 3? So we know pi over 3 is over here. Where is 2 pi over 3? Well, if I do 3 and take away 1, because there's a 1 here in the front, 3 take away 1 is going to give me this angle over here to the left. If I do 3 plus 1, is going to give me the angle right across it. That'll be 4 pi over 3. If I add these two together, same thing. I'm going to get 5 pi over 3, and it's going to give me the angle across it. So this gives me the position all around the unit circle, and it's helpful. So this is the first quadrant. All of the trig ratios are positive. In the second quadrant, only sine is positive. In the third, only cosine is positive. No, I'm so sorry. Jumping ahead of myself. Only tangent is positive. And the last one, only cosine is positive. All sin tacos. Okay? Only tangent is positive. Only sine is positive. All of them are positive. And over here, only cosine is positive. So, what's this cosine? Okay. Where is 2 pi over 3? It's right here. In the second quadrant, only sine is positive. Is that sine? No, it's not. It's cosine. So automatically that means the answer is negative. All right. So what do? First, you take the negative, you add it to make it into a positive coterminal. Then you use your reference angle, pi over 3. Pi over 3 is your hand. Fold it. Cosine is the bottom. Sine is the top fingers. Cosine, that means 1, 2, 3. It's always square root. It's always square root. It's always square root. Square root of 3 divided by 2. It's always divided by 2. Okay? And then, once you have that, you got to figure out if it's positive or negative. Well, pi over 3 is here. 3 plus 3 minus 1 gives you this guy. Okay? This position right here, sine is positive. That means, hey, that's not sine. That means this is not positive. That has to be negative. So, let's do a few more. What about this guy? Oh no, cosecant. How do you do that one? Well, we talked about this before, but cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to do sine of 16 pi over 3. You're going to solve that, and at the very end, you're going to reciprocal the solution. You're going to flip the answer. So how many times does 3 go into 16? Now remember, this guy's positive, so we're going to be subtracting to bring it back. How many times does 3 go into 16? What is that, 5 times? 5 times. There we go. So 3 times 5 is 15. So we're going to go 16 pi over 3 minus 15 pi over 3. That's going to give me pi over 3. Cool. So that means I have to find sine of pi over 3. Awesome. Well, what am I looking for? Pi over 3. Where's pi over 3? This guy right here. Boom. Okay. Fold it. Where's my sine? Sine is the top. How many fingers? I'm sorry. How many fingers do I have? I'm folding it. Cosine, sine. Okay. How many fingers do I have? 3. So this guy is square root of 3 over 2. Okay. And so remember, cosine, sine. Cosine and sine. I've been talking kind of fast, guys, and I hope I said that earlier, but cosine's on the top, sine's on the bottom. The way I remember it is the C comes before the S in the alphabet, so cosine's the C on the top, sine is on the bottom. So the answer is square root of 3 over 2. So now, okay, I got to figure out, is it positive or negative? Well, let's go back here. Here's pi over 3. Is that positive? Yeah, because it's in the first quadrant. So this guy's positive. And let me go back and see, just verify here. Let's see here. Let me see, cosine of pi over 3. You know what? You see that? Yeah, we did make a mistake, huh? Or I made a mistake. Pi over 3 is here, right? Cosine is the top. Sine is the bottom. Cosine is the top. Sine is the bottom. So I was going too fast. So cosine is one finger, right? So actually this is not right. This should actually be negative 1/2. Okay, you see that? So don't make that mistake that I made. Cosine's on the top, sine is on the bottom. C, okay, C for cosine on the top, S for sine on the bottom. But let's go ahead and continue and see if we can do some of these, okay? What about secant? Oh, actually, we did forget something, didn't we? Now that I got sine of square root of 3 over 2, what do I have to do? Because they're not asking for sine, they're asking for cosecant. So what do you have to do? You have to flip it. You have to do the reciprocal. So the answer to this one is actually 2 over the square root of 3. But your professor's not going to allow you to leave it like that. You're going to have to rationalize it. Well, what does that mean? That means you're going to have to multiply by the same radical, because you're not allowed to leave a radical in the denominator. So 2 times square root of 3, that means you're going to just put it together, 2 radical 3. Square root of 3 times square root of 3, because they're both radicals, you can multiply them. So we're going to be square root of 9. Do you know the square root of 9? Yes, you do. It's 3. So the final answer is 2 radical 3 over 3. And that would be your solution. All right, guys. Let's go do secant of pi. Okay, pi. So for that one, same thing. Secant, you have to know it's the reciprocal of cosine. And actually, this one, we don't have to do anything with it. We just got to go where pi is located. Pi is located right here. Boom. Okay. All right, and what's that point? That is -1, comma 0. What's cosine? Cosine is the first one. Good, so it's -1. Awesome. But remember, they're not asking for cosine, they're asking for secant. So what do I have to do? Reciprocal this guy. So what do? Well, it would be, instead of -1, it would be 1 over -1. Well, that doesn't make any difference because the answer is still going to be -1. All right, so that one wasn't too bad. What about number 9? Last one, guys. All right, secant, same thing. I want to do another secant. Is cosine, we're going to find the reciprocal, -5 pi over 4. It's negative, right? Okay. So it's negative. We got to make it into a positive. Okay. What are we going to add? How many times does 4 go into 5? Only once. All right. But I want to do 2 because, because I want to make it positive. Okay. I don't want to be having these negatives. So 4 times 2 is 8. Okay. -5 pi over 4 plus 8 pi over 4. Okay. And that's going to give me positive 3 pi over 4. Okay. So now that I have this guy, okay, now I have to figure out cosine of 3 pi over 4. Okay. That's what I have to figure out. Well, how do you do that? Well, same thing. You're going to go ahead and look at your reference angle. All right. Where's pi over 4? Pi over 4 is the middle, 45 degrees. You're going to fold it. Cosine, remember, cosine is the top, cosine is the top. How many fingers? 2. So that means we're going to do square root of 2 over 2. The only thing now you got to figure out, is it a positive or is it a negative? Well, where is 3 pi over 4 located? Well, pi over 4 is located there. Where is 3 pi over 4? Well, if you take the 4, take away 1 from the top, that's going to give you 3 pi over 4, which is this angle to the left. And, okay, all sin da goes. 3 pi over 4 is located here. Only sine is positive here. Okay? That is what? Cosine. That means it's going to be negative. Okay? The angle is negative. So the solution would be negative. So guys, hopefully that helps. And let me know. I'll continue to do more examples if you guys are having trouble. All right, guys. Good luck.